The ranch boss hated Sarah's family, but he fell in love with her. On a scorching summer day at the sprawling Greenfield Ranch, the sun hung high in the sky, painting a relentless canvas of heat. Dust rose in lazy spirals from the ground as Sarah drove up the long, winding driveway, her heart pounding with both excitement and dread. She could see him from a distance, Jack Thornton, the rugged ranch owner, standing with his arms crossed, a stern expression etched on his chiseled face. His dark hair glinted under the sun, and his strong, broad shoulders seemed to tense at the sight of her family arriving. As Sarah's car pulled to a stop, her family spilled out, full of laughter and chatter, oblivious to the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. She glanced nervously at Jack, whose glare was a mix of disdain and irritation. Sarah could feel the weight of their history pressing down on her. Jack had never hidden his feelings about her family. They represented everything he despised about privilege and entitlement. Her father, a successful businessman, wore his confidence like a badge, while her mother fussed over the details of their visit, completely unaware of the animosity brewing nearby. "Sarah?" her father called, his voice booming with excitement. "Come help us with the bags." He turned to Jack, extending a hand. "Nice to see you again, Jack." Jack hesitated before shaking her father's hand, his grip firm but his expression stone cold. "Yeah, welcome back," he muttered, eyes flickering toward Sarah as if searching for support. In that moment, she felt torn, between her loyalty to her family and the undeniable connection that simmered beneath her interactions with Jack. "Hey, Jack," she said softly, trying to bridge the gap. "It's good to see you." "Sure," he replied, his voice lacking warmth. He turned away, directing his attention back to the horses grazing nearby. The tension felt palpable. Even the horses sensed it, their ears twitching as they caught the strain in the air. Sarah's heart sank. She wanted to be the one to make Jack understand her family, that they weren't just wealthy snobs but people who loved her deeply. As the afternoon wore on, Jack's cold demeanor didn't thaw. While her family mingled, admiring the ranch and asking questions about the animals, he kept his distance, his frustration evident. Sarah was determined to change that. If only she could show him the love and laughter that filled her family's heart, maybe he would soften. She approached him, her hands nervously fiddling with the hem of her shirt. "Jack, how about you show me the new barn you've been working on?" she suggested, hoping to lighten the mood. He looked at her, brows knitted together. "You really think that'll change anything?" His tone was sharp, but in his eyes, she caught a flicker of something softer, something conflicted. "I just want you to see that they're good people, just like you," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He sighed deeply, looking away. "You don't know what they've done, Sarah. It's not just about you." Her heart raced at his admission, realizing there were layers to Jack's anger that she had yet to uncover. As they stood there, silence enveloping them, she felt an urge to reach out to touch his arm as a sign of understanding. But fear held her back. What if he pushed her away? Instead, she took a step back, her mind racing with thoughts of how to bridge the chasm that stretched between them. Time passed slowly as the sunlight began to fade, casting long shadows across the ranch. Her family gathered around a large oak table set up outside, laughter flowing freely as they shared stories from their lives in the city. They seemed so carefree, so full of life. However, Sarah could only glance toward Jack, who busied himself as he prepared the horses for the evening. He moved with purpose, a stark contrast to the joyous atmosphere at the table. "Sarah, come join us," her mother called, waving her over. Reluctantly, Sarah made her way back to the table, but her eyes kept drifting to Jack. If only he could see how much she wanted to bring them together, to show him that love could transcend their differences. As dinner began, Sarah felt the tension rise again. Jack's presence loomed over them like a storm cloud, dark and brooding. Her heart ached for him, realizing that deep down he was just a man trying to protect himself from pain. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, she thought, wishing for a moment that her voice could reach him, could heal the wounds that ran deep within him. Then, amidst the clinking of cutlery and bursts of laughter, Jack approached the table, standing rigid. "Dinner looks nice," he said flatly, his eyes scanning the group. "Join us, Jack," Sarah's father invited, his voice warm yet unaware of the weight behind Jack's words. Jack hesitated, his jaw tightening as he exchanged looks with Sarah. It was a silent battle between pride and longing, a dance of emotions that neither was truly ready to embrace. "Maybe later," he replied, before turning back to the barn, leaving Sarah feeling isolated. After dinner, as the stars began to twinkle against the fabric of the night, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something had to change. She had to find a way to not only win Jack over, but also to show her family that beneath his tough exterior, there was a heart yearning for connection. The night was just beginning, and with it came the promise of both conflict and possibility. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the ranch, Sarah found herself lost in thought. She couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in her chest since her family's arrival. Jack remained an enigma, a man of few words and even fewer emotions. Every time she attempted to connect, it felt like she was hitting a wall. "If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel," she thought, wishing she could share the weight of her emotions with someone who understood. "Hey, Jack," she called out again, this time more determined. "What are you working on?" He glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "Just fixing up the fence line," he replied, his voice gruff. The flare of irritation in his eyes hinted at deeper issues, but Sarah couldn't decipher them yet. "I'd love to help," she offered, stepping closer to him, wanting to share the burden of the day together. Jack raised an eyebrow, an incredulous look crossing his face. "You think you can just—" He paused, shaking his head as if the idea was ludicrous. "This ain't some picnic, Sarah. It's hard work." "I know it is," she said, her voice steady. "But I want to understand your world, Jack. I want to understand you." For a moment, silence hung between them like a fragile thread. Sarah felt her heart race as she searched his eyes for any sign of softness. There was a flicker, just a flicker, of something that looked like vulnerability, but it disappeared as quickly as it had come. He turned back toward the horses, refusing to meet her gaze. As she watched him, Sarah felt the weight of her family's expectations looming over her like a dark cloud. They were all so eager to impress Jack, her father most of all, but she knew he would never see them as anything but outsiders. What if we could change that, she thought, her mind racing with possibilities. Dinner was approaching, a gathering meant to bring everyone closer, but she could already sense the tension brewing. Her family was excited and chatty, moving around the ranch like it was their own, oblivious to Jack's simmering frustration. They were trying with all their might to make a good impression, yet every time Jack walked into the room, a chill filled the air. It was a strange dance of personalities, and Sarah felt exhausted from trying to navigate between them. She reluctantly returned to her family at the outdoor table, which was adorned with colorful tablecloths and plates filled with food. The laughter rang out like music, but Sarah felt out of place, torn between worlds. Her father was animatedly describing a story from their city life, his hands gesturing widely, while her mother laughed heartily. But Jack's absence felt like an elephant in the room, overshadowing the joy. "Where's Jack?" her mother inquired, her brow furrowing in concern. "Working on the fence," Sarah replied, trying to keep her tone light. "He'll join us soon." "Good," her father said. "He should get to know you all better. It's important." Sarah nodded, but doubt crept into her mind. Would Jack ever truly want to know her family? As the meal continued, she caught glimpses of him from a distance, his silhouette stark against the fading light, a man who seemed more at home with the horses than with people. After dinner, Sarah decided to approach him again. The ranch was quieter now, the sounds of chirping crickets filling the air as stars began to twinkle above. She found Jack near the barn, his focus on a particularly stubborn horse. "Hey," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. He turned, his expression cautious. "What do you want?" "I want to understand why you're so distant," she said, taking a step closer. Why you don't want to even try with my family? I don't owe them anything, he shot back, frustration etched across his features. They don't know me and I don't know them. This isn't about them. Then what is it about? Her voice was gentle but firm. Is it really about them, or are you just afraid? His eyes flashed with surprise, and for a fleeting moment Sarah thought she saw him flinch. He took a deep breath, his body language shifting as he ran a hand through his hair. You don't understand, Sarah. It's not that simple. She took a breath, grounding herself. I may not understand everything, but I want to. I care about you, Jack. I want to see you happy, and I want you to see my family for who they really are. He hesitated, the walls around him seeming to crack, but then they surged back up. You think I'm just going to let them in? After everything? Why not? Sarah pressed, her heart racing. Are you really going to let past hurts dictate your future? You have a choice, Jack. He turned away, crossing his arms defensively. The moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken words and emotions. She felt the pulse of vulnerability that throbbed in her chest, sharing something real in that moment, something that could break through potential barriers. I'm not saying it'll be easy, Sarah continued, her voice almost a whisper, but I believe it's worth trying. The night wrapped around them like a cloak, silence falling as Jack processed her words. It was a tentative step forward, a fragile hope that flickered amidst the swirling tension. The connection they shared felt electric, and despite the obstacles, Sarah knew that there was something deeper between them, something worth fighting for. The tension at the dinner table simmered like a pot on the verge of boiling over. As Sarah glanced around, she could see the strain etched on her family's faces and the tight line of Jack's mouth as he stood at the head of the table, his arms crossed. The backyard was set up beautifully, with fairy lights twinkling above, yet the atmosphere felt heavy, charged with unspoken words and unresolved conflicts. She felt like a bridge between two worlds, struggling to keep them from collapsing into the chasm of misunderstanding. Jack, this salmon is amazing, her mother said, attempting to break the ice. You really should cook for us more often. Jack merely nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly as if he were analyzing every piece of her family's laughter and warmth as a potential threat. Sarah could sense his discomfort, and it stung. He was a proud man, fiercely protective of his territory, and her family's presence felt like an invasion to him. Where did you learn to cook like this? Her mother continued, clearly eager to win him over. I could never get my salmon to taste this good. A tense silence filled the air. Jack finally spoke, his voice low. I learned from my mother. She was a good cook. A shadow passed over his eyes and Sarah's heart sank. She knew that talking about family was a sensitive subject for him, especially with the history he carried. Oh, that's nice, her father chimed in, too enthusiastic. You must miss her. It's great that you keep her memory alive like this. The mention of his mother seemed to deepen Jack's irritation. He clenched his jaw and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Let's not talk about the past, he snapped, his tone sharper than intended. Her father frowned. We were just trying to connect, Jack. It's important to share stories. Sarah felt the heat rise in her cheeks as the argument began to unfold. It was as if a dam had burst. Dad, maybe we should just eat, she interjected, hoping to diffuse the situation, but the tension was already palpable, thick enough to cut through with a knife. You don't get it, Jack said, glaring at her father. You come here and think you can just waltz in and everything will be fine. It doesn't work like that. Jack! Sarah's voice rose, desperate to bring him back to reason. They're my family, they're trying. Trying? Trying to invade my space? Jack shot back, his frustration boiling over. Your family has no idea who I am or what this place means to me. Her heart raced, caught between her loyalty to her family and her growing affection for Jack. It's not about invading, Jack. They want to know you. They care about me. And if you let them, they'll understand you too. Why should I? He looked at her, and for a moment, the anger flickered to vulnerability. Why should I let anyone in when all they see is a ranch and a man who doesn't fit into their perfect little world. His admission hit her hard. The pain behind his words was palpable, and she could see the cracks in his tough exterior. "Because you deserve that connection, Jack," she said softly, her heart aching for him. "You deserve to let people in even if it's scary." Jack held her gaze, and for a moment, the world around them faded. It was just the two of them, lost in the moment. But then the noise of the table rang back into focus, and with it came the weight of their argument. "Maybe you should just go back to your city then," he muttered, the bite in his voice returning. "Jack, don't say that, you're pushing us away." She could feel tears stinging the corners of her eyes. "Why should I care?" he spat, the hurt radiating from him. "Because I care about you. I can't just pretend that everything is fine when it's not." A silence fell upon the table, the previous chatter now replaced by a stunned quietness. Her father looked between Sarah and Jack, his expression a mix of shock and concern. With the tension hanging in the air, Jack's facade started to crack. She watched as he took a deep breath, his posture relaxing slightly. "You don't understand," he said more quietly now. "Every time I open up, I get hurt." "Then let me in," Sarah replied gently, her voice almost a whisper, filled with a tender conviction. "Let me understand." The rawness of the moment was almost too much to bear. The table, once a place of laughter and connection, became a battleground of hearts. Jack turned away, running a hand through his hair, the weight of his pride crumbling before her eyes. With a heavy heart, Sarah continued, "I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we can't let fear control us, Jack. We have to be willing to take risks." His expression softened slightly, and she could see the flicker of hope mixed with uncertainty. "You really think they will accept me?" "Yes," Sarah said, her voice firm. "But you have to give them a chance." As the night wore on, the tension remained, but a fragile understanding began to blossom between them. Jack's bravado faded, and Sarah could sense the walls around his heart starting to lower. It was a messy, complicated feeling, like the wildflowers that grew on the ranch, blooming beautifully in the most unexpected places. The dinner continued, but the atmosphere shifted. Jack's responses became more considered, less defensive. He engaged in small talk with her father, even exchanging a few tentative smiles with her mother. In that moment, Sarah realized that love could grow in the spaces where fear once stood, a lesson that resonated deeply, reminding her that sometimes the most genuine connections require patience and vulnerability. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The journey of love and acceptance is worth every moment, and Sarah felt cautiously optimistic about what was to come. As the shadows lengthened in the barn, Sarah felt a tension that crackled in the air like static electricity. She glanced at Jack, who stood rigidly at the far end, his back turned towards her. The sun was setting outside, casting an orange hue that spilled through the wooden slats, creating elongated shapes that danced on the ground. It was a beautiful sight, yet the beauty of the moment felt overshadowed by the weight of their earlier confrontation. "Jack," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't respond, but she could see the muscles in his shoulders tense. Taking a step closer, she hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to breach the wall he had built around himself. "Can we talk?" Finally, he turned to face her, his expression a mixture of frustration and vulnerability. "What's there to talk about, Sarah? You saw what happened at dinner. It's clear I'm not welcome in your world." "That's not true," she argued, shaking her head. "I want you to be a part of my life, but you have to meet me halfway. You can't just push everyone away." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that spoke volumes of his inner turmoil. "You don't understand. It's easier to be alone. I don't have to deal with the expectations, the judgments." Sarah felt a pang of sympathy for him. She took another step forward, closing the distance but not invading his space. "I know you've been hurt before, but you're not alone anymore. I'm here. I want to help you." Jack's gaze dropped to the floor, and in that silence, Sarah could sense his fear. "I can't just let people in, Sarah. It's safer this way." "But it's lonely," she pressed gently. "You might be safe, But you're also missing out on love, on connection. I can't promise it will always be easy, but it will be real." His eyes lifted to meet hers, and for a moment she saw a flicker of hope, like the first thaw of spring breaking through the winter chill. "What if it doesn't work?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Then we deal with it together," she replied, her heart racing with the intensity of the moment. "You don't have to go through this alone. I want to understand you, and I want you to understand me." Jack's expression softened, the hard lines of his face beginning to ease. "I've built my life around not needing anyone, and now you're asking me to change everything." "Maybe it's time for a change," Sarah suggested, her voice steady. "You're not just a ranch boss, you're more than that. You have dreams, passions. I can see that in you." "Dreams?" he scoffed lightly. "What dreams can I have? I'm stuck here, tied to this place." "Why do you think that?" she challenged. "You have the power to change your circumstances. You just have to allow yourself to believe it." The barn quieted, the only sounds being their soft breaths and the gentle rustle of hay. Jack's defenses seemed to be crumbling, and Sarah felt a glimmer of hope ignite within her. "You're stronger than you think, Jack," she said softly, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "And so am I. Together, we can face this." He stepped closer, the space between them narrowing until she could feel the warmth radiating off him. "You really think they could accept me?" "Yes," Sarah affirmed, her voice unwavering. "But you have to show them who you really are. Not just the ranch boss, but the person with hopes, feelings, and fears. The person I know." Jack's eyes searched hers, the vulnerability he had kept hidden slipping further into view. "I've never let anyone see that side of me," he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "Then let me be the first," she urged, her heart racing in anticipation. "Let me in, Jack." In that moment, the barn felt like a sanctuary filled with unspoken promises. Jack hesitated, his expression a mixture of fear and longing. She could see him weighing his choices, struggling with years of pride and emotional walls. "I'll try," he said finally, the words heavy but sincere. "For you. I'll try." Sarah's heart soared as she took a step closer, breaking the last barrier between them. In that small, intimate space they stood together, a fragile connection forming, a sliver of hope amid the scars of their pasts. "Thank you," she whispered. "It means everything to me." As they remained locked in that moment, the weight of their fears began to dissipate, replaced by a tender anticipation for what could be. Their hearts beat in rhythm, a melody of vulnerability and desire echoing through the barn. In that warmth, Sarah felt a shift within herself as well. The love she had for her family and the affection budding for Jack could coexist. No longer did she have to choose sides. She could embrace both parts of her life. If you're enjoying this story, you might want to share your thoughts. It's amazing how connection can blossom in unexpected places, isn't it? As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Sarah felt a bittersweet mix of emotions wash over her. The day had been both long and transformative, filled with tension and revelations. Now, as her family prepared to leave the ranch, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken words, lingering glances, and a sense of impending change. Jack stood at the edge of the barn, his silhouette framed against the dying light. The way he leaned against the wooden structure, arms crossed, spoke of a man wrestling with his thoughts. Sarah felt a pull towards him, a connection that had grown stronger despite the chaos that had surrounded them. She took a deep breath, the familiar scent of hay and earth grounding her as she approached him. "Hey," she said softly, not wanting to disrupt the fragile peace that hung in the air. He turned his head, his expression a mix of contemplation and something deeper, perhaps even vulnerable. "Hey," he replied, his voice low and rough, the gravelly timbre sending a shiver down her spine. Their eyes locked, and Sarah could see the weight of the day written in Jack's gaze. There was a flicker of uncertainty there, a hint of the man he had revealed to her in the barn only hours before. "I know it's been a tough day," she began, shuffling her feet slightly as she searched for the right words. But I think we made some progress. Jack's brow furrowed slightly as he regarded her. Did we? I've spent most of the day at war with your family. I don't know if that's progress or just more of the same. She stepped closer, feeling the warmth radiating from him. You can't keep pushing everyone away, Jack. I see how hard you've fought to keep your distance, but maybe it's time to let some people in. He sighed, raking a hand through his hair. It's not that simple, Sarah. Your family, they don't understand me. They see a ranch boss, a man who's supposed to be strong and unyielding. They don't see what's beneath that. And what's beneath that? She pressed, her heart racing. Because I do. I see a man who's afraid of losing what little he has left. His eyes met hers, and in that moment she felt the walls around him begin to crack. It was subtle, but there was a shift, an acknowledgement that perhaps he didn't have to carry that weight alone. I don't want to be judged anymore, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. You won't be, she assured him, stepping even closer, their bodies almost touching. Not by me. I want you to be you, Jack, flaws and all. He held her gaze, and she could see the flicker of hope battling with fear. What if I can't be the person you want me to be? But what if you are? She countered gently, willing him to see the possibility. You've shown me so much already. The way you care for the ranch, the way you're willing to fight for what you believe in, that's the man I want to know. Jack hesitated, his vulnerability laid bare before her. And what if I fail? What if I'm not strong enough to change? She reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. Then we'll figure it out together. You don't have to face this alone. The moment hung between them, thick with unspoken promises and shared fears. Jack's expression softened, and for the first time, she saw a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You really mean that? Of course, she whispered, her heart swelling with affection. It's about compromise, Jack. Your family, they'll need time to understand you, just like you'll need time to understand them. He nodded slowly, his resolve seeming to solidify. I don't know how to change overnight, he admitted, his voice laced with uncertainty. But I'm willing to try. That's all I'm asking for, Sarah replied, her smile wide and genuine. A small step at a time. Their moment was interrupted by the sound of her family gathering their things, readying themselves to leave. The noise pulled them back to reality, but the connection they had forged felt different now, more profound, more authentic. Sarah, her father called from outside, his voice echoing in the barn. We're all set, you coming? She hesitated, glancing back at Jack. This was it, the moment when she would have to bridge her two worlds. I'll be right there, she called back before turning fully to Jack. Promise me you'll think about what we talked about. He stepped closer, his expression earnest. I promise. I'll think about it. Good, she said, her heart racing with the thrill of it all. And remember, it's okay to be a little vulnerable. It might lead to something beautiful. Jack nodded, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah thought he might take her hand, but he stopped short. Instead, he gave her a soft smile, one of understanding and hope. As she turned to leave, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. As she stepped outside, the ranch seemed to glow in the twilight, revealing not just the land but the possibilities that lay ahead. Sarah's family stood waiting, a mix of curiosity and concern etched on their faces. Everything okay? Her mother asked, her brow creased with worry. Yeah, Sarah replied, her heart light. Everything's going to be okay. As they drove away, she glanced back at the ranch where Jack stood framed against the evening sky. It was a scene that would forever be etched in her memory, a moment of change, of acceptance, of love blooming amidst the challenges that lay ahead. Thank you for listening, and if you like this story, please leave a comment. Remember, sometimes love can bridge divides we never thought possible.